What we are dealing here with is a very serious problem. It is radicalization and extremism institutionalizing in our academic institutions that are paid by the taxpayer, that are meant for general education and research, that are now being hijacked by radicalized groups that use it for political and ideological goals. It's completely unacceptable. We have to speak out as openly as we can about that it is happening, that the university is complicit, that the administration is complicit, that staff who is not speaking out is complicit. It is such a grave problem that the only thing that I can do as a whistleblower is bring it into the light.
Professor Schippers, may I ask you some questions?
Yes, of course. What do you want to know, Rico?
Well, how are you doing, Michaela?
Yeah, slowly getting better. Thanks for asking. I'm working. Actually, I found out that getting better is hard work.
We've not discussed you being ill. This would be the first time that we're mentioning that briefly, but good to hear.
Yes.
That you're recovering. Thanks for your hospitality. We're in your home again. We've been here before with Follow the Science.
You're welcome.
In January, I talked to Buijs. It's 2 months ago. And he is an interdisciplinary social scientist with the University of Amsterdam. And you invited Laurens. Welcome.
Thank you.
So now we're all three of us are here. Laurens, I've been following you for the last 2 months since we last spoke at your work at University of Amsterdam. And you're sending out email updates also. And if I quote one that you sent out a couple of days ago, March 26th. An update from the whistleblower of the University of Amsterdam, UvA. My position at the UvA is currently in a critical phase. The central board of the university is about to fire me. How are you doing?
Good question.
Yeah, I'm in a fight with the university and it's intense. And you ask how am I doing? Well, it's sort of up and down. I also have my emotional lows because it's an intense battle, because I love my job, I love my colleagues, I love my team. And it's, I feel alienated from them and attacked. So that's difficult to deal with. The feeling of isolation and being scapegoated and being cancelled is not nice. But I also am combative and feel like I want to, I want to keep fighting for my position, but in general for a more open social science at my university, a more open gender studies.
Okay.
So it's two things basically, also for yourself double. And for making sure things get better in general.
Exactly, it's double. Yeah, it's for myself. Of course, I would love to keep my job, but also, it's difficult at the moment, but I'm still trying. And also, but it's more in general about academic freedom. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, because we found a lot of people who were basically in a similar situation.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Which is very worrying.
Yeah.
We're going to continue the conversation we recorded January 25th, which goes into the core why you called upon a whistleblower protection mechanism that is available at the university. You started using that, or you called on the whistleblower protection mechanism in November. That's what you wrote on your website. So even before you published an opinion piece in January. So I want to start off with going back to November of last year. What was the core you blew whistle on back then, and what happened between you and your employer, University of Amsterdam, in the period leading up to when you wrote that opinion piece in January?
Right. So first of all, I think it's important also to reflect on what Michaela just said. It's happening, I became aware of the fact that it's a general problem in academia, and that I feel that we are facing a rising totalitarianism that is coming from universities. And I saw a lot of colleagues fighting for their positions in different universities, sometimes also losing it. And I also wanted to, and then I started to look critically at my institution more and more. and I felt that there's a lot of problems there. So already when COVID started, when the pandemic started, I started to speak out against the COVID measures, against the forced vaccination, against the way in which vaccination was developed. And that caused me a lot of trouble. I also, because I teach in science and technology studies at the university, so that brought me into problems. But also in the gender department. So I have two fields of interest in my job. It's gender and sexuality and science and technology studies. And in science and technology studies, I noticed I cannot speak about COVID properly and all the technologies that are being deployed there. And in gender studies, I noticed that I couldn't really critique what I see as the radicalization of the LGBTI movement and especially the trans movement and the role of gender studies in that radicalization. So I started to address it. I had several talks with different directors, managers, but also the dean in my institution to address the problems, and that I felt like I cannot really talk properly, openly, and I cannot really publish, I cannot do my work, I feel isolated. So I had these conversations already for 1.5, 2 years before I went into the whistleblower policy regulation. And then, so at a certain moment, I was just with my back against the wall. I felt like nobody was listening to my calls for help. I saw the radicalization of the institution. I saw it in a more national way. I saw the problems, of course, also internationally with wokeism rising and cancel culture rising. And I saw that my university, my beautiful University of Amsterdam, was also going down the hill very quickly. So I felt like there's only one thing I can do, or I get fired, because I was so isolated and so many people complained about me and I was demonized as far right, as conspiracy theorist, as crazy, as unscientific, etc., as transphobic, homophobic, microaggression.
So everything you can think of, basically.
Everything you can think of. And so people started to file complaints against me. And I felt, okay, now I should give up or do a final attempt to save the whole institution. And then I became aware of this whistleblower policy.
That's when you learned about that it was in existence.
Yeah. Like a friend of mine told me a couple of weeks before that it exists. And because we have, in the Dutch law, we have whistleblower protection. And the Dutch law prescribes every educational institution that is funded by Dutch government that they should have an internal whistleblower policy.
Okay, so I looked that thing up, and you can find it on the website of UvA, and I'll link it under this conversation, just like our previous conversation can be reviewed there. UvA has a whistleblower protection document on since 2007. That was when it was last revised and adopted by the board. Article 4 says, position on the notification. Within a period of 8 weeks from the moment of the internal report, a written and substantive position on the matter is reported. So within 8 weeks of you blowing the whistle in last year November, university has to respond. Now, what was the core of your whistleblower report in November, and what has been the response by university?
I wrote a 30-page report, a very substantiated report, in which I discussed, it's a confidential report, so I cannot talk explicitly about it, especially not about the names and about the details. Yeah, but in general, I can talk about the problems because that has already been reported on in the press. So I talked about radicalization of the gender department, where I saw a rise in extreme thoughts, both in staff and in students, and I wrote about that. And also I wrote about derailment of the diversity and inclusion policy, where we are now implementing with the University of Amsterdam very radical D&I policy, diversity and inclusion policy, which is, for example, aimed at decolonization. That's a big term at my university, where students and staff want to decolonize the curriculum, decolonize the courses and
you have
programs.
To educate me, because
what
is that?
It's a vague term, but it means get rid of the history of colonization and slavery. So there's a lot of talk in my university about whiteness, that my university is accused of being too white,
Okay.
Not only in terms of the skin color of the people that work and study there, but also the curriculum. That it's too much from a one-sided perspective, and that there's not enough reflection on the fact that there's this bias in it. Yeah.
Okay, so that was your report. You filed that thing, 30 page. They're supposed to respond within 8 weeks. What has been the response that you got since November last year?
Very strangely, like the moment I handed in this report, I put a lot of effort in it, and I felt it's a good document.
You're proud of it.
I'm proud of it. I already knew that if I was the board and I got that document, I know, I'm in trouble. Yeah. So the university, I also named a lot of details, and one of the things I mentioned, for example, how this diversity and inclusion policy is derailing, is, for example, that staff is getting fired with false accusations of being unsafe, staff was being accused of transgressive behavior, unsafe behavior, breaching certain codes of safety, but there was false accusations, so people got fired without any good proof. Yeah? So I handed it in, and then for 8 weeks I didn't hear a lot. I even didn't get a confirmation that it was received, and I was waiting for it because I was supposed to get a confirmation, but it didn't send it. So I had to call and email, and first thing I noticed, there's a lot of discussion because I handed it in at the board, and I felt that they wanted to really discuss what they want to do with it. So I had to wait until before the Christmas break, and then I got a response. And in the response it said that they would follow up with my report by implementing an external research committee, and that I was invited after the Christmas for a talk with the Central Board of the University to discuss.
That's good, sounds good.
Yeah.
Right, no?
In theory.
You think?
In theory.
Sounds good. So Christmas went by, and then?
It sounds good.
They could have responded sooner.
They could have responded sooner, and also one of the things I asked, because I handed in my complaint not at the Central Board but at the Central Complaint Committee of the university, and I asked them because I, as a whistleblower, have the option to hand in the report either with the Central Board or to the Board of Supervisors. And I wanted to discuss with the Central Complaint Committee where should I hand it in. And they didn't discuss it with me. They made the decision for me to hand it in at the Central Board and to leave the Supervisory Board beside.
Okay, so you were looking for dialogue, you didn't get it. You got a written confirmation saying, well, we're going to create an external body that's going to look into this.
Yeah. For me at that moment, because I was worried that the policies that were derailing, for me there was also the question like who is involved here. So I wrote a lot about, for example, the involvement of the management of the faculty, but I also said something in the report about, but what about, for example, the Central Board? And then it would be strange for me to hand it in at the Central Board if they were probably also involved with the things that go wrong, you know. So that's why I asked maybe the Supervisory Board should look at this. And then people decided for me that the Supervisory Board was excluded and that it went to the Central Board, which I didn't like.
So we didn't go into depth in our January 25th interview. We went into wokeism and non-binary, the core of your profession. So now I would like to ask you, Christmas went by, New Year started, 2023. That external committee was started, I assume. So how did that go?
So an external committee was implemented, but it took a lot of effort for me. So because the Central Board for quite some time was quite vague what they exactly wanted to do with my complaint, with my report, with my whistleblower report. First they said, we will have a researcher, but maybe from a commercial bureau, and maybe one person and not really a committee. For them, the word committee was sensitive. Maybe we're not going to install a committee, but we have some people look at it. And I was like, no, I want a committee with external professors from other universities. So I had to put pressure there. And one of the things I put pressure was by writing an opinion article in the university newspaper, which is now often discussed. So I decided that just a couple of days before the university came out with the news that I handed in a whistleblower report, because I have the right to remain anonymous as a whistleblower, but I thought, yeah, now everybody's gonna talk who is the whistleblower, and people know it's me, because I have been struggling with a lot of these issues already for the past month, so people probably know that's me, so I might as well come out myself. So I decided to write an opinion article in the university newspaper in which I came out as a whistleblower, and in which I explained a little bit what my problems are at the University of Amsterdam with wokeness, with cancel culture, with diversity policy. And that article blew up. And it also ended up in the national press and also a little bit internationally. So that blew up, and that also created pressure for the university to really do something with my report.
So a committee was instated, was created. Who selected the people in the committee?
The central board selected the people in the committee.
Would you have selected the same people?
I would have preferred to have, for example, somebody like Michaela or other professors in Holland who are known for their critique on established science. I would have like 1 or 2 members in that committee from them. But okay, it's a proper committee. Like, it's people in the committee who are with an undisputed reputation, so to say.
Okay. So you didn't object, and
I didn't object. Also, at a certain moment, I was like fighting. One thing that I achieved was that it was a committee with external professors from other universities. What I think is important, that the chair of the committee comes from the University of Leiden, which in Holland is, I think, known as a more conservative university, which I think is good. That a conservative person will look at the progressive University of Amsterdam. Yeah, so it's like 3 people in this external committee, 3 professors from Holland, from other universities. At least it's from other universities, and with undisputed reputation.
Now, you did choose to publish your item in the university publication.
Yeah.
Shortly before that committee was made public, right? And you're allowed to talk to the press. That's what's in the whistleblower mechanism that people can read. You're allowed to talk to the press, like us, when there's acute danger involving a serious and urgent social interest, necessitates immediate external reporting, or a situation in which the employee can reasonably fear countermeasures as a result of the internal report.
Yeah.
So why did you decide to go public before university did?
I wanted to control the narrative. I felt like I was already aware that my whistleblower report would trigger a lot of debate, and probably also intense debate, because I know how sensitive these topics are about diversity and wokeism and gender. So I wanted to be in the lead. I thought, like, I'm the whistleblower, so I also have the right to now start the whole discourse and the whole narrative.
So what happened after our January 25th interview up until now, in the past 8 weeks?
It was a big war. I think this is how I can describe it. A war has started at the University of Amsterdam. It has been very difficult for me. I think so. As a whistleblower, I deserve protection. I have immunity against being fired, for example, or suspended. But I have been suspended, not officially, but informally, because I'm not allowed to have contact with my colleagues. I have been alienated from colleagues with whom I was publishing. Also, for my PhD supervisor, I have been alienated. I'm not allowed to enter the campus. I have a campus ban. The whole campus is prohibited for me to go to, and also I have some gag orders, so I cannot speak freely as far as the University of Amsterdam is concerned. So I object against all these measures, because I think as a whistleblower I deserve protection and freedom, and the whole whistleblower legislation is meant to protect me, and also to, as long as the research is going on, and this committee is still researching. They will start field work next week, and they will expect a report in June, before the summer. So I should have protection until the summer. against being fired, but also the University of Amsterdam should take care that I can continue my work. The contrary has been the case. I've been isolated and threatened and attacked by my direct colleagues, by some radical students, woke students who accuse me of discrimination, of transphobia, of homophobia, which is not the case, but also of the central board. So I get a lot of legal threats, and I think that is very inappropriate. Yeah, so and then I fight back. So I have a lawyer, I have a legal team, I have an advisory team, and then I get accused of being too combative. And then I say, yeah, if you don't give me my rights, then I get combative. So it's a war. It's a war at the moment.
I read that whistleblower mechanism of the university, and I urge everybody to read that thing also. It doesn't particularly strike me as a protection mechanism for the whistleblower. It also protects the interests of the university. So it sets boundaries for your behavior as a whistleblower.
Yeah.
As much as it lays down the rules and regulations that university has to follow.
Yeah.
So it's not only one-sided protect the whistleblower; it's also protecting the interests of the whistleblower.
Of the institution, you mean?
Of the institution, yeah. There you go. Mm-hmm. That's a Freudian slip. We'll talk about that one in a different Follow the Science interview. Get back to this. You wrote, "The culture of fear and divide and conquer at University of Amsterdam Social Sciences is so intense that my supporters don't dare to speak out. They are in fear of losing their job. This means that the independent research committee that is currently researching my whistleblower claims cannot function properly." Is that their position, or is it your position that they can't function properly?
This is my position.
Based on, can you elaborate on?
Well, they are researching an institute that is now, sort of characterized by fear. And people who represent my position, my voice, that is people who are critical on wokeism, critical on the culture of the University of Amsterdam as it has been growing, critical of some behavior and positions of professors and of high-ranking officials at the University of Amsterdam. People are very fearful to speak out. I have a lot of supporters, I know that. Professors, policy officials, students, staff, in all ranks of the university, people support me, but it's all silent support, because people are afraid that if they speak out in favor of me and my position, that they might be next to get in trouble, to be sanctioned or suspended or fired. So this is a very, I think, important realization that this University of Amsterdam has a culture of fear, in which people don't dare to speak freely about critiquing the curriculum, critiquing colleagues, critiquing how we do classes, how we do research. I think that's very scary.
So just to make sure that I understand you properly in what you said earlier, we're to expect a product, outcome of that committee no sooner than June?
Yeah, no sooner than June.
So you're left hanging until then?
I'm left hanging until then, so this is why I am now, my lawyer and me are now demanding, asking talks with the central board of the university and with the dean of the faculty, in which we talk about, okay, how can I also be protected as according to this whistleblower legislation. I have some rights to be protected. I'm not being protected at all. How can I, as a social scientist, do my work? How will the university protect academic freedom? And also difference in opinion, difference in perspectives, difference in viewpoints. I think, for example, when it comes to gender and sexuality and gender studies at the University of Amsterdam, I am a scholar that you can call gender critical. I'm critical on the gender movement. I'm also part of it, and I'm an LGBTI activist, but I'm also critical. But there's not space in the University of Amsterdam to be gender critical, because if you take a gender critical position, you are personally attacked and accused of discrimination, homophobia, transphobia, etc.
But one thing that strikes me also, that there is a mixing up of ideology and science.
Yeah.
So these two should be separate.
Yeah.
You can have an ideology and you have the scientific findings, and these should be different.
I agree.
Yeah.
I think there's a very strong ideologization of the social sciences in the in general, but also especially at the University of Amsterdam. I see it very clearly. It's a problem in social science. It's a young science, so there's still a question like how can we substantiate.
Yeah, but it's not the only science where it happens.
It's not the only science where it happens. It's true. No, it's true. So there's
also historical examples where this goes really, really wrong.
Yeah. No, I agree. There's a lot of problems with ideology and with morality and that's sort of getting mixed up with.
Yeah, because then your scientific findings have to fix in this box of ideology that you have.
Yeah.
And it's not going to fit there because it's a different form.
It's true. Yeah, there's this mixed up of opinions and facts, and of course I think it's always good when my students also take positions, societal and political positions, based on scientific insight, but you should always separate ideology from scientific argumentation, and then you can of course use them together, but you should always be able to separate them. And what in my view, when it comes to social science, also for example at the University of Amsterdam, I see that get mixed up a lot. There's a lot of activism dressed up as science. For example, when it comes to gender, Islam, religion, multicultural society, there is a sort of left-wing ideology that is sort of dressed up as science.
In the past period, early March, you co-organized with the Great Citizens Institute an event about free speech in Dutch higher education. And I'll link that one also under this conversation. We have talked about that already with clips taken from that event.
Yeah.
And one of the speakers there, Mr. Bas van Bommel, he's a literature lecturer at the University of Utrecht, mentioned that in my words, I'm paraphrasing, 7 taboo topics that he identified. Among those were critique on gender or non-binary or woke, the corona measures, critique on the corona measures and the vaccines, the war on Russia and Putin. You're outspoken on all those topics, but if you reflect, maybe it's too soon already now, but if you reflect, what triggered things spiraling out of control? Which topic, or is it the lot?
No, it's without a doubt my work on gender. So at the heart of the debate at the University of Amsterdam at the moment is it's basically the first Dutch gender war that we see now unfolding here at the University of Amsterdam, where I have been critiquing this non-binary gender identity and sort of the idea that sort of your sex at birth is something that you can very easily change in your lifetime, and in which we have to educate children that it's not fixed but it's fluid, and this is something I disagree with. I fully support transgender in the sense that I know also from scientific fact that gender dysphoria is a phenomenon that actually exists, but it's in a small group of people, and it already happens before birth. There's this process in the brain that you develop a gender identity that's not corresponding with the body. But what I now see in society and also at the University of Amsterdam is that we teach students that you might feel woman this day and man next day. Maybe you don't even have gender dysphoria diagnosed, but you can still change and your sex. And this is something that I have objected to, and that has been very sensitive at the University of Amsterdam.
And has been the core, to recap, of what you're being attacked on.
It seems like this diagnosis is being broadened. Like everybody has ADHD and now everybody has...
Now everybody's trans or non-binary. Like everybody can be there. And I think that especially for the trans community itself, it's not good. It feels to me that it's hijacked. With sort of far left-wing extremist thought, and also with ramshackle science, I have to say. I see that a lot of this gender science that people put forward to defend their radical trans claims is basically radical sociology, constructivism, where you reduce reality only to social constructs and to norms. And I think there is a physical reality, especially when it comes to gender and sexuality, with the body and the psyche, and where gender and masculinity, femininity are they are deeper concepts than only social. They are not only socially constructed. They also have a psychological perspective and a biological perspective.
So we did talk about that event, reflect on that a couple of days after it took place.
Yeah.
Then certainly it was too soon to ask you, so have people talked to you about this, but this is now a couple of weeks back. So have people talked to you about that event from the university? How's been the response?
So I'm not in active contact with the University of Amsterdam, so I don't know. The board of the university decided to ban the event. I planned to organize it on the campus. That didn't happen. We of course have addressed that in the previous episode.
Well, you had found a location facilitated by university, and they cancelled that.
They cancelled.
So you searched one outside of the university.
Exactly. I found my own location outside of the campus. So yeah, no, I have not heard back from that event about that event from my colleagues.
Okay, in our January interview, you mentioned pluralism that has left University of Amsterdam in your assessment, being a cause for stifling open debate. Now, as a whistleblower, you've chosen the path of transparency, explicit open debate. You're taking the opposite side of stifling. What's been the effect of your choice of your route, your strategy to deal with this, as opposed to another possible strategy, which would be hush and not be vocal and wait until June?
For me, waiting until June was not an option because I was marginalized every day and structurally isolated, intimidated, also by students, also by staff, accused, personally attacked, also in the press. Also professors started to attack me at me and my work in the national newspapers, and so I had to defend myself. And I felt if I don't speak up now, then I have already been sidetracked and sort of excluded, and they have already say goodbye to me basically. So I felt I have to fight. And I have to fight for my voice, my perspective. I have to fight to reach the students and the staff that are not fully brainwashed yet and that are open to the fact that I'm not a far-right extremist transphobic person, but that I'm a professional gender theorist who is doing professional scientific work and who wants to elevate the scientific debate in my department instead of undermining it or attacking it or politicize it. Yeah? So I feel like I had to fight back, and that is, I think it's not easy, but I think this is the way to go at this moment, because universities, the ideology is so strong, the polarization is so strong, that the powers that be at the University of Amsterdam, the established powers, are so strong and so omnipresent that you have to give a fight. If you don't fight against it, you will lose. So, I mean, and now I fight, and of course it's a big struggle, and I'm not sure if I will win. I mean, it will be very unlikely if I win, because it is David against Goliath. I am a small dwarf in comparison to this big university.
David did okay.
Yeah, he did okay.
He had a good stone.
Yeah, so that's why, okay, maybe I can win. I'm not giving up yet, but I am fighting a giant. Yeah, and yeah, so let's see what happens.
On your Twitter,
at least you put up a fight.
I put up a fight.
You don't give in.
I don't give in easily without giving a fight. That's what it is to me. And listen, it's very realistic that I will get fired soon, or if I survive, then that the committee might not judge in my advantage, or if they do, then maybe the board doesn't follow up on the committee. So there are still a lot of traps ahead. Let's see what happens.
On your Twitter you say, I'm trending, but I'm trending by hate.
Yeah.
And people can look it up, you're on Twitter. Death threats, real death threats have been made on you also. Yes, I'm stressing that it's a real thing that's happening to you. It's a real physical. Yeah, so it makes us think about an event that we visited in Copenhagen, where leading scientists in the world, Johnny Ioannidis, for example,
Yeah. He listed a whole list of things that can happen to scientists in general, and then he said, I had all of them, including the death threats, except for the physical assault. Nobody has physically assaulted me yet. That was, of course, could still happen, but I was shocked. Everything that was on the... And yeah.
And he is the most quoted scientist in his field. So that's saying...
In the world, actually.
Also, so as a journalist, I've interviewed many whistleblowers over the last couple of years, including Thomas Drake of NSA, John Kiriakou of CIA, Roelie Post of European Union, Lisa Ling from a drone program of the American military, and the family of Reality Winner, who told us about tampering in the election system in the United States. So these would be the big whistleblowers over the last years. Your approach, you're fighting, you're being verbal, and calling upon people to join you strikes me as different from some of the others. It almost looks like you're searching out that fight, not shying away from it. Do you recognize that, or is that a conscious decision?
Yeah, so for me it's like I'm combative. I'm very aware of how deeply rooted the problems are at the university. And I'm also very aware of the critical time that we live in. I think it's really, in general, a time to speak out and to fight for what we have left in terms of freedom. And to at least keep what we still have, try to keep it as much as we can. So that is also a mindset that has grown into me. Like, it's the world is in such serious danger, and authoritarian and totalitarian thought is rising everywhere, and it requires resistance, and resistance is never easy dialogue or waiting or hoping for the best. Resistance is fighting and organizing and not letting go without a fight. Yeah, at least that's how I look at it.
Have you been reached out to, since you came out publicly as a whistleblower, by politicians, lawyers, other whistleblowers, or free thinkers, domestic and abroad?
I have reached out a lot. Yeah, so that's the university. In the university itself, I have been isolated completely. But when it comes to the outside world, outside of the university, I've got a lot of support from the wider Dutch population, but also from whistleblowers, from other organizations, also people who fight wokeism and cancel culture in other universities, both in Holland and abroad. So yeah, there's been a lot of support, and that's also to my delight, and something that I get hopeful from, that there is a network of resistance rising. And I also try to contribute to that we have a network of resistance in Holland and also internationally when it comes to protecting the freedom in higher education.
Yeah, so carry on. So can you tell, that's the audience, how does that look? What is that thing? Can you tell us about
Well, at least what I think is important to have everybody in a network, that we can at least connect to one another. So at this moment I have a WhatsApp group, and with it's a community with different groups under it. I'm also working to create a whole online environment on a server, on a secure server, where we only work with open source software, where we have a cloud and a chat program and a social media program, so people can log in and share information and connect throughout the world. So I've set up this initiative, viewpointsdiversity.net. And that initiative is now being set up, and we have this server and this cloud server where we can connect people from all over the world who is fighting for free higher education.
One of the common things that all those whistleblowers will tell me is that first thing that happens is you're afraid, David against Goliath, and second thing is you're isolated, you're alone.
Yeah.
So you're addressing both of them with solutions like this. Okay, that's good. So in our previous interview, you said your experiences made you wary or even distrust science. Now the title to our series is Follow the Science.
Yeah.
We're fully aware that you cannot follow science. It's tongue-in-cheek, so it's meant as a joke, if you were. You can't follow science, but can you distrust science? What has science done wrong, Laurens?
Well, so let me start out by saying that the moment that where you cannot speak freely and where you get attacked, but not only attacked, but it's literally dehumanized. There is this dehumanization going on in universities, in the free Western world, when you express certain positions that have well established science behind it, even. It's also my positions, for example, on gender, my gender critical positions are all grounded in gender theory. I'm not just talking, I'm a scientist.
It's not just an opinion, but it's a fact-based.
It's a scientific, fact-based position. So, and if the moment that you cannot express that without not only personal attacks, but what I said, dehumanization, isolation, manipulation, personal attacks, it's very intense, very worrying. So I think what has gone wrong, somehow along the line, we have forgotten in science the core principle of the project, that is freedom of speech. That it's always, science can only exist and only flourish and only be healthy in a climate where you can speak freely without being worried about social norms, about what people might think about your truth. Science is a relentless search for truth without, what people think about it and without society or politics involved or ideology or religion. And somehow religion got back into science, ideology got back into science, politics got back into science, and it's a huge problem. Yeah. So that is the core of the problem, I think.
Okay. You've found legal help, is what you said, you and your lawyer.
Yeah.
So has university facilitated that, or how does that work? And you strike me as still empowered.
Yeah.
So it's good to see that you're, at least from the appearance, you're not in the ropes too much yet.
Yeah.
But do you feel that university is coming after you also? Is it just you defending your role as a whistleblower and standing up for what feels right? Mm-hmm. Or would you face legal consequences also? Is that something that you talk about with your lawyer?
So, first of all, to my amazement, nobody in the University of Amsterdam has had any concern with me or my interests. Not academically, not legally. I have some support in university, but only informally and in secret, because people don't dare to speak out. But official organs or official people within the organization have not been reaching out, have not been helping me. So also legal support, I had to find it myself. I had requested help from all sides in the university, also from so-called independent bodies, but nobody wanted to help me. So I think that is a big problem, that I had to find legal help myself from outside of the university. And when it comes to, so is your question if I'm afraid that the university might...
so let me make an example.
Might prosecute me, or?
Yeah, that would be the breakdown of it. So let's make an example. Mr. Thomas Drake worked for the NSA and saw these eavesdropping programs being developed and say, well, that's not what we're about.
Yeah.
And he did everything by the book, following the procedure, going up through the chain of command until he ended up doing the whistleblower procedure. Yeah. Same with John Kiriakou, until John's lawyers told him, listen, you can take the plea deal and spend this amount of time in prison and it can be a blip in your life, or you can continue your fight and be a decisive moment in your life and spend the rest of your life in jail. So NSA, CIA came after them. Ms. Roelie Post, to make a domestic example, worked for European Union and lost her pension after exposing child trafficking from Romania from her position, and had serious threats made on her and her life. Yeah. So, and that's continuing to this day. Yeah. And people can look that up, and I'll link that under here as well. Also, Mr. To make that example, just a little sidestep, Mr. Pieter Omtzigt, one of our parliamentarians in the Netherlands, got a unanimous vote in our parliament saying, support her, Minister of Foreign Affairs. And the outcome of that was, well, it's bottom line is it's it's a human resource issue that she has, so she better talk to human resource of European Union. We're not involved.
Yeah.
Nothing happened. They were all attacked after the whistleblowing thing.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's a real question. Do you feel that you might face that kind of attack also?
I have not considered like legal attacks yet, but what I do already encounter is personal attacks, and also what I feel attacks from radicalized staff and students that I'm also worried about, and that I think the university should act way more than they do to protect me. And I think it has to do with their denial of the fact that there is extremism within the university, within our programs. It's a big step for the university to accept that, and they are resisting it. So I don't know. It's not something that I have sort of anticipated on, but who knows?
Okay. No, not to scare you.
Yeah.
These stories are real.
Yeah, it's
Sounds
true.
pretty
It's
scary,
absolutely real. It's
On the-
absolutely true what you say. Yeah.
Did I scare you?
No,
It sounds scary.
it sounds true. It's true what you say about these other people. Yeah, that it's a realistic scenario. Yeah.
Okay. On the positive, Science Guide, which you quoted on your site, I believe, or on Twitter,
Yeah.
said, quotes the European Union on an article saying academic freedom in the Netherlands has worsened, and even wokeism is mentioned there.
Yeah.
So European Union is paying attention and say, well, Netherlands, you take care of your academic freedom.
Yeah. Yeah,
So-
that's an important study that came out yesterday or this week, and that sort of reported on academic freedom in Europe, and in which very clearly it said that in the Netherlands it goes down more in comparison than to other countries. So I think that is a very welcome message at this moment, in my fight at least. I mean, it's a horrible message, but it's welcome for me in my fight because it shows that I'm not exaggerating. And I think a lot of people, at least in university, think, because a lot of people are sort of influenced by all the scapegoating against me, that people think, what is Laurens Buijs? Is he a radical himself, or does he have any truth to what he says? So a lot of people are confused, and I think this kind of news will help people to determine position.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, to close off this interview, and thank you for being outspoken. Two final questions. The first one would be this: have you said anything in this interview that might be seen as you shouldn't have said that. You were under instructions not to go into those details about your employer. I mean, you're very outspoken and very transparent, and I respect you for that.
Yeah.
Were there moments in this talk where you feel, oh, well, this might backfire?
I have that with everything I say. I have really, for the past 2 months, I've gotten used to the fact that everything I say might backfire. At the same time, you also quoted the whistleblower legislation, in which it says that I'm free to speak when it concerns grave institutional mishappenings that concern also the interests of the Dutch population. And I think it's important to realize that we are dealing here with is a very serious problem. It is radicalization and extremism institutionalizing in our academic institutions that are paid by the taxpayer, that are meant for general education and research, that are now being hijacked by radicalized groups that use it for political and ideological goals. It's completely unacceptable. We have to speak out as openly as we can about that this is happening, that the university is complicit, that the administration is complicit, that staff who is not speaking out is complicit. It is such a grave problem that the only thing that I can do as a whistleblower is bring it into the light. And then what happens, let's see. Yeah? But if we keep it in the darkness, then it will sustain.
Final question is, you wrote in your, well, it may not be a newsletter, but you're keeping people informed, me as well, thank you for that. Please consider joining the group if you want to help me in this critical phase in my fight against wokeism, cancel culture, and plain corruption at the University of Amsterdam. So let's close this thing off with a call to action. How can people find you? How can they help? What would you have them do?
Excellent. Please, people, if you want to help me, I have a whole infrastructure set up in WhatsApp group, email groups, private server. The best thing to join is to go to my website, laurensbuijs.org. Send me an email if you want to sign up for help, especially when you're a student or somehow staff in a college or university somewhere in the world. Then that is then you have a key position for me, and that is an interesting position for me to help.
And something that's also nice, I think, is to think about how can you change the system, because you're trying to change the system from within, which is a good way to go. But on the other hand, you can also think about, okay, it's so broken. Can we, for now, let's say, make sure there is a scientific institute where there is this scientific freedom, where people can go to a sanctuary? The Brownstone Institute said we want to be a sanctuary for people who are being. We have, of course, the Great Citizens Institute, but my idea would be to have students and staff let them think about what does the ideal university look like if there were no constraints, and what will it look like in the academic world and academia look like if we go on like this, and what can students do, what can staff do, because they don't maybe have to speak out, but they can help set up such an institute. Or everybody should use their own brain. I shouldn't be thinking, I'm thinking about it, but other people should think, I would love to have a university different from the system somehow, where students and staff have really academic freedom, because it's been getting so low on these 7 topics, by the way, but the other topics are relatively free. So people outside these topics will think, what are they talking about?
Yeah,
but
absolutely.
This is a real issue.
I think we have to do both, right? I think we have to fight in the institutions that we have to remain the freedom that is still there, if we can.
Yeah.
But also, for sure, we have to set up our own initiatives. And I think it would be wonderful if we would have a European or even a Dutch Brownstone Institute.
Exactly.
A place of refuge where we can go for shelter.
Yes.
In these times. So I think it's a crucial idea, and I hope we can make it happen.
Yes, let's do that.
Yeah.
Laurens Buijs, thank you very much.
You're welcome.